The Encounter Beyond Reason. In 1901, on a sunny August afternoon, two British women stepped into the gardens of the famous Palace of Versailles, never realizing that this moment would change not only their lives, but perhaps our understanding of time itself. Charlotte Ann Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain were two scholars, rational, educated, and anything but mystical. Moberly was the principal of a women's college in Oxford, Jourdain, a serious and brilliant linguist. Their trip to France had no mysterious goals, just rest culture and a chance to breathe. They chose Versailles, the grand stage of France's royal drama. But Versailles is not merely stone and garden. It is a convergence point of memory, power, tragedy, and time, a space where something unseen still lingers. And on that day, in that garden, the veil between worlds briefly lifted, a path that shouldn't have been there. After touring the main halls of the palace, the two women walked toward the Petit Trianon, once Queen Marie Antoinette's private retreat. They veered off onto a small path, hoping to avoid crowds, entering a shaded lane that began to feel increasingly strange. The air stilled, birds fell silent. The light dimmed, not with clouds, but with something more subtle, like a painting fading in age. The trees stood unnaturally still. The color of the grass seemed muted, and behind them, the way back seemed to dissolve. People out of time. They saw two men near a small structure, dressed in long coats of an 18th century fashion. But more than their clothing, it was their presence that unsettled the women. The men did not acknowledge them. They stood stiffly like actors, awaiting their cue. Something was off. One man had a grayish-green face. Moberly described him as grotesque, and his eyes made her recoil, but Jourdain did not see him at all. They continued on and encountered a woman dressed in white, sketching quietly, her expression vacant. Moberly would later identify her as Marie Antoinette, her appearance matching precisely the historical paintings. How could this be suspended in a second reality? They had no time to reason. Soon after, a young man approached, speaking oddly accented French, pointing them toward another path. They followed instinctively. Suddenly, the wind returned, light brightened, sound filled the air again. They had stepped back into the present, but everything felt hollow. We didn't speak. We didn't dare, Moberly later wrote. We left the garden, knowing we had survived something that defied language. Questions without answers. Initially, they said nothing. They feared ridicule, but the memory would not leave them. Eventually, they wrote everything down, every detail. In 1911, they published an adventure. Some mocked it. Others whispered was Versailles, a temporal anomaly, a fault line in reality. One theory, they had entered a temporal echo, a place where high-energy events leave residual imprints in space. When triggered by specific emotional frequencies, these echoes may replay like holograms caught in a loop. But Moberly and Jourdain insisted this was no echo. It wasn't like watching a film. They had been inside. It felt the air, the tension, the timelessness. This led others to propose something greater. Perhaps certain locations act as junctions between timelines, between worlds. Under the right conditions, we can slip between them. And if so, who controls the key? Part drawn into another reality, a space, that did not belong behind the Petit Trianon. They hadn't just shifted places, they had shifted planes. This was not Versailles of 1901, nor exactly of the 1700s. It was a hybrid part memory, part dream, part simulation. The stone benches were cold, not physically, but energetically. The light had no source. Trees stood like frozen sentinels. It wasn't dreamlike, it was something deeper, a designed echo of consciousness. Jourdain later described it as being trapped in a glass chamber, able to see, unable to interact. Moberly felt she was inside a memory, not entirely her own. The second layer of reality. Time stopped. They could not say how long they walked. A bridge appeared with no water beneath, only void. When they peered down, they did not see shadows. They saw versions of themselves in antique clothing, mirrored souls, perhaps from another life. Was this reincarnation destiny memory? They didn't know, but they knew they were not just seeing the past, they were being summoned by it. Versailles was not showing history, it was showing them. The man with the unseen gaze. Later, Moberly saw a man in black, wearing a tricorn hat, his face gray. He stared with eyes that pierced. Jourdain saw nothing. Was it a glitch in dimensions? Was each woman tuned to a different layer, the woman drawing beneath the tree? At the path's end, a woman sat drawing beneath the trees. She wore a high-collared white dress, hair coiled in 18th century style. Her hand moved, but her expression was empty. Moberly swore this was Marie Antoinette, but not the queen, rather her lingering essence, not a ghost, not a person, something else. Dream or dimensional overlap. Their hearts beat differently now, not panic, but resonance, like their own energy had synced to a higher rhythm. A guard arrived. He pointed the way. As they exited, light returned, sound resumed, the veil closed. They were back, but changed. Suzette really happened. For years, they searched for answers. Some believed in residual memory zones, others in parallel dimensions. Perhaps Versailles was a place where realities intersected, and Moberly and Jourdain were attuned enough to cross over, if only briefly. Who guards the gate? Their final question was not scientific, but spiritual. If there are gates, who keeps them? They never answered, but they suspected not machines, not aliens, but an intelligence that lives between thought and time. Part 3. The unraveling years later. What cannot be explained cannot be dismissed. After Moberly and Jourdain published an adventure in 1911, responses were polarized. Skeptics scoffed, but quietly, some researchers, physicists, theologians, and mystics began asking a deeper question. What if they were telling the truth? The parallel universes hypothesis. The theory of the multiverse is no longer mere science fiction. Quantum theorists now propose the existence of infinite parallel universes, each representing different outcomes, decisions, or timelines. Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation posits that every choice spawns a new branch of reality. If that is true, could some of those branches ever intersect? Some believe Versailles was such a convergence point. A lattice of energy intersections. Ancient geomancers and modern energy researchers identify Earth's energetic ley lines. Grid-like patterns where energies concentrate. Pyramids, temples, and ancient wonders often rest on these lines. Petit Trianon may lie on such an energetic crossroad, explaining why Moberly and Jourdain, with heightened awareness, slipped into another vibration. The theory of spatial memory imprint. Rupert Sheldrake proposed morphic resonance, the idea that events leave imprints in space. Intense emotional or spiritual moments can echo in the fabric of reality itself. Versailles, a place of power, betrayal, and death, may retain those imprints like data etched in stone. Under precise conditions, one may re-enter them. Quantum time, non-linearity, and folded realities. Einstein showed that time bends under gravity, but quantum physics suggests time may not flow. It may layer. Carlo Rovelli, in The Order of Time, argues that time is an illusion created by consciousness to interpret change. Perhaps what happened to Moberly and Jourdain wasn't going back in time, but momentarily stepping out of linearity. The observer effect and reality as perception. Quantum mechanics proves that observation alters outcomes, the famous observer effect. Could Moberly and Jourdain, by observing with intense presence, have activated a latent layer of reality? Perhaps they weren't chosen. Perhaps they resonated. Theological implications. Where is God in all this? Scripture reminds us that with the Lord 1,000 years are like a day. Psalm 94. Modern theologians see God not as a being within time, but as the foundation of time itself, the architect of all timelines. If God is the prime observer, then perhaps these interdimensional slips are not errors, but divine nudges inviting awakening. Old questions, new answers. Similar stories echo across history. Pilots seeing floating cities, walkers stumbling into vanished villages, children recalling past lives, monks reappearing after decades unchanged. What connects them? Sacred locations, altered states, and the same message. Time is not what you think, and your soul is not trapped. Were they the first link in a hidden chain? Perhaps Moberly and Jourdain weren't special, but they were still and listening, and Versailles whispered, "You're not lost, you're remembering." Part 4. The Great Question: Who controls the flow of time? When the universe becomes a mirror, their story didn't end with Versailles. It began a lifetime of wondering if reality can shift. What then is real God in the fields of consciousness? Theologians suggest that God is not in time, but beyond it. Like an author who writes all timelines, then invites characters to awaken within the tale. Perhaps these moments, these time slips, are the moments when the divine invites participation. The cosmic honeycomb. One model envisions reality as a honeycomb, each cell a version of time-space. Most remain sealed, but a few leak and awareness seeps through. Versailles may be such a cell, a sacred leak, not to escape, but to remember. The soul's awakening. Perhaps the event was not about history, not about Marie Antoinette, but about the deepest versions of themselves meeting across timelines. Not time travel, time reunion. The message was sent, but who heard it? No flying saucers, no beings of light, just atmosphere, energy, and emotion. Perhaps the signal came from God's silence, and the message was, "You are more than one life, and I have not forgotten you." Symphony of Realities. If timelines are notes, God is the conductor. Each soul is an instrument. Versailles was a place where the music shimmered, and two souls heard the theme beneath the noise. Not proof, but experience, science measures. Faith believes, but only experience transforms. They returned from Versailles with no evidence but a memory carved in the soul, not to prove, but to remember. A final note. A decade later, Moberly passed. Jourdain vanished. On her desk, a note remained. If you ever see light between two curtains, do not close your eyes. Look, and remember you've been there. You just forgot. Who are we in this vastness? We are echoes of light dreaming the dream of form. We are children of a creator without a name, still whispering through broken timelines. And Versailles was not the first gate, nor the last. The question is not, where is the portal, but are you ready to walk through?